Okay. So can you tell us your full name, the name you were born with?
Yes, it's Margit Anna Marie Blumenthal.
How do I spell that?
Blumenthal.
So Diamond is your married name.
Yes.
And Margit, when and where were you born?
I was born on December the 2nd, 1927, in Berlin, Germany.
So how old does that make you right now?
88.
And what is your religious identity?
I am Jewish.
Okay, so now we basically open up the floor and you tell us your personal Holocaust experience. And however much you want to tell us, whatever you want to leave out, it's up to you.
Well, let's start when I went to school first. In Germany, you go to school when you're 6 years old, not before. So it so happened that I started school in 1933, which is when Hitler came into power. And I was unfortunate because my teacher was an early adherent of the Nazis, of the Nazi Party. He wore the swastika, the insignia, and there was only one other Jewish child in my class, and of course he paid no attention to us, or when he did, it was not in a good way. And you can understand children take after their teacher. And so life wasn't very easy for us. Well, after that, we were living in the suburbs.
Okay.
When I first went to school. But my father contracted cancer and passed away at the age of 38. And so my mother and I moved into the city to be closer to my grandmothers and my aunts and uncles and so on. I went to school in the city, but very soon Jewish children couldn't go to school anymore, to public school. And Jewish teachers, for instance, could no longer teach. So I didn't go to school for a while, but I had an aunt who was a school teacher, and she was out of a job now. So she rented some rooms in a synagogue in Berlin and started a school, a fabulous school. That was fine until the 9th of November 1938, when, as you probably know, Kristall Night took place. So the morning of the 10th of November, our telephone rang, and my aunt was at the other end and said to my mother, "Don't send Margit to school." And my mother said, "Why not?" And my aunt said, "Don't you know what's going on? You stay home and try not to go out." Okay. And then as a tail end, she said, "You know, you don't have a man in your house. Could I send my husband, Ernest, my uncle, to you, and would you keep him until this blows over?"
Yeah.
And of course we said yes. And pretty soon my girlfriend's father, who lived very close by, was in our apartment, and all sorts of people, some of them we didn't know. Men slept in deck chairs on the floor, and what my mother insisted on was that the wives didn't call and didn't come, because that was going to expose us. You know, the other people in the house would probably denounce us. So we had all these people, and my mother, who used to buy for only her and myself, now had to go all over Berlin shopping because she couldn't suddenly buy a whole lot of food that would, again, expose us. So that's what she did. She went all over the city. And when things died down, well, actually, even before, for instance, there was one man, we'd never met him before, but my girlfriend and I used to roller skate with him, together in a nearby street, and I knew the girl from the roller skating. So she told her mother, "Why don't you call Mrs. Blumenthal," my mother? She called, and we took this man. And this is rather a sad story. We found out that the wife had given all the money they had and jewelry and everything to some German who was supposed to accompany the family across the border into Czechoslovakia. We heard subsequently that he took them a little ways out of Berlin and then turned them over to the Nazis, and of course they were killed in Auschwitz. There was a lot of that kind of thing. But, so, now let's see, after that, very soon thereafter, things became worse and worse. And people told my mother, "You should send your daughter on the Kindertransport," which was a way of getting children out of the country. My mother found out about how to go about this, and in May 1939, she put me on a Kindertransport, and I was taken to England. I had just turned 11 years old at the time. I was very fortunate, because in England I was taken in by the principal of one of the best boarding schools in the country. And she had no children, and I think she really loved me, I think. She wanted to adopt me. But my mother managed to get out of Germany a few days before war was declared. She got her visa as a domestic servant, because the Brits needed household help and cooks and so on. She'd never done anything like that. But anyhow, that's how she got out. And the people who had said that they would take her couldn't wait until she came. So when she arrived in England, they said to her, "Look, we realized we shouldn't tell anybody that we're not going to take you because we can't wait. But we have made arrangements for you to be a cook housekeeper in relatives of ours' home. They live in Ireland, Northern Ireland." So my mother was shipped off to a beautiful place in County Fermanagh in Ireland. And from then on, I spent the vacations with my mother in Ireland. This was many hundreds of acres, a farm, and with a lot of farm help and so on. And I learned a lot about farming. Give me a farm today, I could run it. I can milk cows as well as any of them, and plow a very straight furrow, both behind the plow with a horse, and then later on with a regular vehicle. So then I graduated from high school, and the principal of the school wanted to send me to Oxford. But by this time I'd had enough of charity. Nobody made me feel that I was a charity case, but I knew I was. So I didn't accept that. My husband subsequently said to me that it was very ungracious of me and that I should have accepted her offer, but I didn't. And I had always been very good at sports. I I was the sports captain at our school. And so I became a coach, trainer for field hockey and tennis and so on. I went to different schools and trained their athletes and made quite a lot of money. So I put myself through London University that way. And when the movement to create Israel started, I was marching with all the people in London to make that a reality. And eventually, after I was through with school, actually, when I was 21. I was 21 on December 2nd, 19 what? 27, 40.
Yeah.
Anyhow, my math is not very good, and I'm old. But anyhow, I left England, and I had, in the meantime, I forgot. I was a big wheel in the student union, British student union. So at one of the congresses, I met another girl who had an itch to become, to wander the world like I had. So she and I decided we were going to leave England and we'll start out and just live in different countries, which we started to do. You could only take, I think it was 25 pounds, which was very little money, out of the country at the time. And so we each had that amount and a backpack, and off we set across the channel and covered a lot of ground. And eventually, when we had no more money, we had heard that there were camps in the south of France where Israelis were preparing people to go to Israel, and where they were, for instance, putting up the North African Jews who weren't treated too well by their countries either, and so they wanted to go to Israel. So off I went with this girl. She only was with me a very short time because she got very sick. And so she decided to go home, and I gave her the rest of my money. And because I knew I was going to be paid very little, but I would have something. And so I stayed and worked with the North Africans. And because I speak fluent French and the French didn't know that I wasn't French, somehow they got me, the people from the Jewish agency got me a pass of some kind,
Yeah.
so that I could go in and out of the port whenever I wanted to. And as a result, I was able to help to transport the North Africans to Israel. But my main work was in a hospital where the sick North Africans were cured, hopefully, and I experienced some incredible experiences. I mean, it was a totally different culture that I was exposed to, and it was extremely interesting. And after that, I decided, well, I should see what Israel was like. So off I went to Israel with one of the transports. And I had many interesting experiences because those were the early years in Israel. And I became I did sort of what you're doing. I went around doing a lot of photography of villages being started and then how they progressed and so on. And I interviewed the first ever mayor of Beersheba, for instance, or Beersheba, as it's called in Hebrew.
How do you
Yeah.
spell that?
Beersheba. First of all, it means 7 wells. That's what it means. There must have been 7 wells there somewhere in the desert. It's Beersheva. That's in Hebrew.
Yeah.
In English, it's Beersheba. Anyway, yeah. I couldn't possibly go. Oh, I missed out a whole area of when I was living in Italy, and knew all the. I translated the Marshall Plan for the Italian government. I knew all the heads of the various government departments. And in those days they changed presidents, constantly. It was very interesting. I'd be sitting in somebody's office and I'd be listening to what, I'd know who was going to be the next president before anybody else did. Anyhow, it was fun. And you may know the name of Mastroianni. Do you know who that was? No? Very famous Italian actor. I knew a lot of actors because I taught English to a couple of them. And then I got to know all their clique. And that was very interesting. I think I've just about, well, I guess I haven't come here yet.
Yeah.
So eventually, the aunt that had started a school for Jewish children had managed to escape to Shanghai.
Oh, okay.
That was a big, and so, and very interesting, I must tell you about her. She, of course, went by ship. Her husband left our house,
Mm-hmm.
and she managed to get out with him on a ship, and a lot of her students from Berlin, with their parents, were on the same ship. So, and it took, I believe, three weeks to go from Trieste. They started from Trieste and went to Shanghai. And while she was, as they boarded the boat, she realized the parents of the children, what were they going to do? They didn't know English. They had to know English. They couldn't, on German, they couldn't do it. How were they going to get a job in Shanghai? So she went to the captain of the ship and she said, will you let me have your dining rooms when you're not using them? And he said, what are you going to do? And she said, all these people on this boat need to know English. And by the time we arrive in Shanghai, I'm going to have all of them speaking English. And he said, okay, all right. This worked out fine, and there was another passenger on this ship called Horace Kadoorie, Kadoorie, very famous name. You should Google it, Kadoorie. And he saw what was going on. Very wealthy man, incidentally, a family that has done an awful lot of good all over the world with their money. And he saw what was going on, and he decided he must meet this woman. And so he introduced himself, and she had no idea. None of the other people had any idea who he was, except, I presume, the captain knew. So he got to know her, and he saw, the people were all speaking English. It might not have been very elegant English, but it was good. So a couple of days before they got to Shanghai, he said, Mrs. Hartwich, that was my aunt's name, not only the children on this ship need educating, but there are already thousands in Shanghai, because that was an easier place to get to. And I'm going to have build a school for those children, and you're going to run it. And she got off the ship with a job.
Wow.
And there are many books written about her. Yeah. And there are a lot of people in this country on the West Coast, because many of them from Shanghai, they came to San Francisco and then just stayed there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're, believe it or not, her children from her school took like here we have the SATs.
Mm-hmm.
In England you had the Cambridge School Certificate. I took that in my school. Her children took that, the Shanghai children. They became doctors and lawyers and all sorts of professionals here. Yeah. I don't think any of them ever were on the welfare rolls. So that's what happened there. So when she got here, she decided that my mother and I had to join her. And there was also one other sister who had been saved by her husband. Her husband needn't have gone through everything. He was not Jewish. But he stuck with his wife and starved and suffered terribly. And the school lady insisted all of us get together, and that's how I ended up here.
So what year was that?
1954, I think. I think we pulled into New York Harbor on the 1st of August, 1954, I think it was.
So it wasn't cold then?
No.
Okay. So how old were you then? I can figure out the math.
54, 27? No, 27? I must have been 26, 27, something like that. You wouldn't believe. I don't know, do you have room for all this?
Yeah.
Well, I found some friends with whom I had worked in the south of France. They were in New York. I was in San Francisco. I bought a ticket for $68 on the Greyhound to travel the southern route from San Francisco to New York, and met my friends. And first stayed with them. I didn't have much money, so I didn't pay them very much. But eventually I was able to pull my weight. In fact, we were able to move into a bigger apartment. And I got a very interesting job with the Israel Government Tourist Office. So one day I forgot to tell you that I had bought for $80 in 1954. I bought a 1939 Dodge. $80, yes. And I bought a book on automobiles, etc. And I parked that car across the bridge, George Washington Bridge, on the New Jersey side, because it was much cheaper to insure.
Yeah.
And so I know who that is. All right. So anyway, I had this wonderful car, and I took people, Americans who didn't have cars. I took them all over the place. I took them to Cape Cod. I remember that was my first big trip. I wanted to see Cape Cod. I'd heard about it. So, and yeah, it's going to ring like that all the time now until.
Oh.
Anyhow, can you edit? You're going to edit this, aren't you?
Yeah, it should be. We've had phones ringing that before.
Okay. anyhow, because you wanted to know about my husband.
Mhm.
That's a doozy too. So I was always taking everybody everywhere, as I told you. And one day I was supposed to go with a girlfriend and somebody that she'd found, some student from Norway or somewhere. We were going to take him to show him the Long Island. So I was in the kitchen making sandwiches and picnic stuff. And my girlfriend calls and says, listen, I got a call from a guy. He's here with a business partner, friend and business partner, and I've invited them to join our picnic. And I said, who are they? And she said, well, they're two businessmen from Chicago. I said, businessmen? You know, who's interested in businessmen? Well, it's done now, and they're going to be standing outside the Statler Hotel, and one's called Erwin, and he'll be wearing a gray raincoat, and the other one's called Bert, and he'll be wearing a brown coat. And I told them, she gave them some time that I was, okay, I was furious. I had to take the skis out of the car because, you know, there wasn't going to be enough room. I had to make more food. I was determined not to like these guys. Anyhow, the next day, I pull up in front of the Statler, and there are these two guys exactly the way they had been described to me, with those coats and everything, and I can see they're holding big cartons of something. I figured, they brought something for the picnic. Turns out they brought all the good stuff because they had the money to buy it. Anyhow, so they get into my car, and this Erwin, from the moment he gets into the car, absolutely doesn't let loose. He wants to converse with me, and I was very monosyllabic. Anyhow, we picked up then my friend and the Scandinavian student. Wait a minute, but we lost him somewhere along the road. Well, anyhow, we went and to Long Island. We had a wonderful picnic, and wherever I went, this Erwin dogged my steps. I mean, I couldn't get rid of him. It turned out the other one was married, actually. So, anyhow, and that was it. Then a whole lot of other things happened. I think we had about 3 or 4 dates. Well, actually, yes, in New York, that's right, about 3. Then he said, listen, I've got to leave now because we have a business trip, and Bert is on his own, and I'll call you in the week. Okay. I had lots of other friends. It wasn't that urgent. In fact, when people asked me about this new guy that kept calling me in the office, I said, oh, don't worry about it. He's from Chicago, and I'll never see him again. So anyhow, yeah. So off he went with his friend to do whatever business they had to do. He had actually invented something. Do you remember millium? What millium is? It's a sort of grayish material, and it was particularly good for ironing board covers. You couldn't burn the cover, and yet you could it helped you do a good job of ironing. That's what they were producing and selling. So on Wednesday, this was all until, it must have been to the weekend. Anyhow, I remember in the middle of the week, I'm in the bathtub, and my friend, with whom the female part of the couple that I'd moved in with, knocked on the bathroom door and said, you know that guy that you've been going out with? He's on the phone. He's calling from Atlanta, Georgia. So I said, well, you'll have to wait till I'm out of the bathtub. It took me a little while. He was at the other end. He said, do you know what you're doing yet this coming weekend? I said, yeah, I'm driving a car to Florida because I was being elevated to a very good job for the Israel government, tourist office. And they were giving me a week or 2 vacation And I had found in the newspaper, I'd found somebody who wanted his car driven to Clearwater. And it was a fancy car. So I applied for the job. And that meant I could go for free to Clearwater because he paid for everything. And so I said to Erwin on the phone, yeah, I'm going to be in Clearwater, and then but I don't want to stay there, I want to go to Miami. I've always heard. So he said, okay, I'll be there at the other end waiting for you. So that's what happened. As I was going from Clearwater to Miami on the bus, I was thinking to myself, I'd forgotten what the guy looked like, you know. It was really funny. And then that was it. We spent a couple of days together. He says, I've got to go home now. But, do you know how he proposed? This tells you something about his humor. I was washing some socks of mine. Oh, and he said, oh, could he put his socks in the sink too? I said, yes. And then he said, he sat down, he said, on the edge of the bathtub, you know. I mean, I was washing the sink, there was nothing going on in the bathtub. And he said, how would you like to wash my socks for the rest of your life?
Oh my God.
That was it. And then he left. So, that's the story. I mean, it's not the full story, obviously, but I can't get everything in there.
Wow. So, and how long were you guys married for?
He died of almost the same thing as my father, actually.
Really?
Yes.
How old was he?
He had just turned 64, something like that.
So. And how many children did you guys have?
Just two, because I had the misfortune of having back problems, and the surgeon said no more children.
Were you too small?
The neurosurgeon said that I could end up in a wheelchair. You know, because everything shifts to, yeah.
Ah.
So that was that. I have two wonderful daughters, married to two wonderful guys, and I have three wonderful grandchildren, which is why I'm in Pittsburgh. I would never have moved out of the woods of Illinois otherwise. But I wanted to watch them, to be there as they grew up. And I'm very close to all three.
Yeah. How old are they?
The oldest is 25. That's the one at Yale. The next one is a boy who comes and eats with me here every Thursday. And he's at CMU, and he already has a job waiting for him. Google and Microsoft fought over him.
Stop it.
And he will be in August. The moment he graduates, he has an unbelievable job. And in New York, where he wanted to be in Manhattan.
That's impressive.
That's what he wanted to do. But he will go on to get a PhD.
Smart kid.
And the youngest one is in Israel right now. She'll be going to Brown when she comes back in this August, I guess.
Wow.
She's already a sort of known writer. She's won a lot of awards for her writing, both poetry and short stories.
Wow. Very cool. And you said the oldest one is at Yale, right?
Med student. She graduated from Brown with all the honors that you can have, and worked for 2 years at Baines. Have you ever heard of Baines? It's a financial company. They wanted to keep her, but she squirreled away lots of money so that she can pay for a lot of her expenses now.
Yeah. Okay, so you answered all of these. Last question. What is your favorite thing to do now?
Probably still to travel, although
Yeah.
I don't do it on my own anymore now. Because at this age, I don't know what will happen at the other end. I mean, if I go somewhere where I've been relatively recently to Russia and various parts of South America where I hadn't been before and where I don't know people.
Yeah.
So in that case, I went with a group. Elder hostels are very good
Oh, okay.
for travel.
Cool. Okay, those are all my questions. That was fun. Oh, one more question. What did they, on the Kinder Transport, what did they transport you on? Were you on a train?
The parents brought us to the train station, and we went from Berlin to Hook of Holland.
Okay.
It's on the, and then we crossed the channel. I was the only one in my cabin. I was with 3 other girls, and I wish I knew who they were
Yeah.
and where they ended up. I'd love to know them now,
Yeah.
but I don't. They were all seasick,
Yeah.
and I was climbing up and down. They had those bags, there are plasticized bags that you
Yep.
puked into,
Yes.
and I was dealing with that.
Oh.
At that time, I didn't know that I was really a good sailor. My husband was an excellent sailor,
Really?
and we always had sailboats. And very soon after we were married, I used to, luxuriate on deck and let him do everything. One day he came home and he said, "Listen, I'm sick and tired of you doing nothing on the boat, so I've signed you up for Steve Colgate gives very, very well-known sailing courses. And he had signed me up for a beginner's course, and he himself had signed himself up for an advanced course.
Yeah.
And I became a pretty good sailor.
So you guys lived in Illinois?
River Woods, Illinois.
River Woods.
It's literally in the woods. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful place to raise children.
Yeah, and then you just came here 2 years ago, you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I came
No.
here to Weinberg Terrace 2 years ago.
Oh, got you.
I came to Pittsburgh in 2001,
Okay.
14 years.
Oh yeah, because you said you were over on Bayard.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, that's all I need. Got my info. You got the pictures?
Yeah.